You know, in the Philippines, which is Asia's biggest Catholic nation, something pretty wild is happening. Thousands of people are turning to this really ancient rite, exorcism, to solve what feel like very modern problems. The demand is just skyrocketing, and the priests on the front lines, they believe they're fighting a literal spiritual war. So what's really going on here? Let's dive in.
So listen to this. That's a quote from Mary Rose, a wife and mother in Manila. And her question, am I crazy? I mean, that just cuts right to the heart of this whole thing, doesn't it? It's this terrifying uncertainty that completely blurs the line between a person's mental state and what some believe is a spiritual crisis.
And for Mary Rose, and honestly, a growing number of Filipinos, the answer to that question, well, it isn't a medical condition. For them, these terrifying episodes of anger and losing control have a very specific name: demonic possession. They believe they are under a spiritual attack.
And right there, that's the core question we're going to explore. Is this a full-blown spiritual war, a battle for human souls, like the church says it is, or is this a tragic symptom of a public health crisis in a country that's just struggling with a massive shortage of mental health care?
Okay, to really get a grip on the scale of what's happening, we need to head to the nation's capital, Manila. This is where the church's exorcists are, well, on the front lines every single day. Just look at that number, 10. Let that sink in for a minute. That's roughly how many exorcisms a team in Manila is performing every day. This isn't a once-a-month thing. We're talking about an intense, ancient ritual happening over and over again. And the waiting lists? They're huge. It just shows you the staggering and, frankly, growing demand for this kind of spiritual help.
Okay, so let's go back to Mary Rose, because her story really shows how this battle isn't just being fought in churches. It's happening inside people's homes.
Her family's home, it's basically become a fortress of faith. I mean, their entire day is structured around these rituals. They're using holy water to push back evil, a sacred bell that they believe demons hate, a handbook of prayers they use daily, not to mention all the rosaries and medallions. For them, these aren't just symbols, they're weapons in a very real daily war against an enemy they can't even see.
And this quote really shows you how high the stakes are. I think our life is a horror movie. Imagine saying that. She's terrified of what she might do when she feels like she's not in control. The threat feels so real. It's visceral. Not just for her, but for her husband and her kids too.
So how does the Catholic Church even approach this? I mean, how do you officially diagnose something as huge as demonic possession? Well, to figure that out, we have to talk to their leading authority on the matter.
And that would be Father Jose Francisco Suquia, or Father Joseph. He's the chief exorcist for the Archdiocese of Manila, and he oversees about 200 other exorcists. But here's what's really interesting. He's not just a priest with 23 years of experience in this. He also has a master's degree in psychology. So he's standing right at the intersection of these two, often conflicting, worlds.
All right, so the church has a kind of checklist. They have official criteria for what they consider a true possession, and it's really designed to rule out every other possible explanation. Father Joseph says they look for signs that they defy science. Things like vomiting up live cockroaches or snails, having unnatural strength, levitation, or speaking in ancient languages the person has absolutely no way of knowing. For the church, that's the clear dividing line between a spiritual attack and a mental illness.
And this quote from him really gets to his core argument. He says, it would be good for science to know its limitations. He genuinely believes that modern science is incomplete, that it's missing a huge piece of the puzzle because it ignores the soul, the spirit. You know, he points to things like rising rates of mental illness and says, look, you can't separate the body from the soul. A purely medical approach, in his view, just isn't working.
But of course, there's a completely different way to look at all of this. A scientific framework that, frankly, comes with a very serious warning.
And this chart really lays it out. It's like you're looking at the exact same symptoms, but interpreting them through two totally different lenses. What the church might call a demonic attack, a psychologist might call a dissociative disorder. What one sees as spiritual oppression, the other sees as possible schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. It's the same behavior, the same reality, but with two completely different and competing explanations. And this is where the danger comes in, according to psychologist Dr. Hazel Malazarte. She says there's just so much room for error here. If you misdiagnose a serious mental health condition as a spiritual problem, you delay the actual medical care that person needs. And her fear is that this delay, it's just going to make them a lot worse.
So it begs the question, right? Why are so many people turning to the church for this instead of a doctor? Well, a big part of the answer might just be a national crisis of resources.
I mean, just look at this gap. The Philippines has a population of over 115 million people. And for all those people, there are fewer than 3,000 registered psychologists. Think about that ratio. It's insane. So when professional help is that hard to find, maybe even impossible to access for many, it's not really surprised that people turn to the one institution that's always there, always accessible in their community, the church.
And you really see this crisis play out in a dramatic way in schools. You hear these reports of so-called mass possessions. The pattern is almost always the same. One student starts showing signs of distress, and then within minutes, 5, 10, sometimes more students start exhibiting the exact same behaviors. And who does the school call? Not a doctor. They call the local pastor. Now, psychologists have a name for this, mass emotional contagion, or mass hysteria. But for the church, they see it as multiple demons attacking all at once.
Okay, let's bring it back to Mary Rose. She's been dealing with this for 2 years. She's already been through 10 exorcisms, and now she's preparing for her 11th. So, what does an exorcism actually involve? Well, it is an ordeal. It can go on for hours. It starts with the exorcist praying to basically seal the room to protect everyone inside. Then comes the confrontation. They use blessed objects, they say prayers in English, but the direct commands to the demon, those are in Latin. The goal is expulsion, commanding the demon in the name of Jesus Christ to leave. And Father Joseph says this often happens physically through things like yawning or burping. And finally, the ritual ends with liberation, when the person, hopefully, returns to a normal, peaceful state.
So after this intense 2-hour ritual is over, our 2 experts deliver their verdicts, and they could not be more different. Father Joseph's view, 100% successful. He believes demons were expelled. But he also adds that to stay free, she needs to maintain her spiritual discipline. Then you have Dr. Malazarte's take. She sees it as a dissociative trance disorder. Basically, she's suggesting that Mary Rose's deeply held beliefs are so powerful that her reality has actually become her lived truth. She's unconsciously mirroring the behaviors she's seen and heard are associated with possession.
But what about Mary Rose, the actual person at the center of all this? For her, the experience is one of pure, profound relief. She says it feels like a heavy weight is lifted, like she has a second chance to live, a chance to be the mom and the wife her family needs. So whatever the clinical explanation is, for her, in that moment, it feels like it worked, and that's what's so powerful. And that just leaves us with this huge, unresolved question, doesn't it? In a world where faith is so powerful and psychological distress is so real, where exactly does one end and the other begin? And maybe more importantly, who gets to draw that line?